Hi, I'm Mercedes Fobb at the Captured on Canvas studio. Welcome to Picture This. For today's painting, Picture This. We're going to capture one of Dubuque's well-known landmarks, the Julian Dubuque Monument. We're going to capture it from the riverside looking up the bluff, and we're going to have capturing it at dusk with some stars, maybe a shooting star or two, and then we're going to capture the silhouette of a sailboat. Before we get started, we'll make sure we have everything in front of us. Most importantly, I'm going to have that 16 by 20 standing vertically on my easel. Next, on my paint palette, I am going to have the primary colors. I'm going to have a lot of white and a lot of black, a little bit of red, yellow, and quite a bit of blue. For my paintbrushes, I'm going to be using almost a handful. I'm going to have just kind of an old wore out brush, bad hair day, just something that's a little spread out will do the trick. We have just a regular 1-inch flat brush, a middle-sized flat brush, about a 1/4 inch, and last but not least, a really tiny brush for tiny details. Before we get started, we always start with the background and paint the closest thing last. With that, we're going to be doing a very colorful sky, and it's going to be reflecting into the water. With that, we're going to be doing a lot of blending, so I always think it's helpful to prepare those colors on our palette first. I'm just going to use my biggest brush here, and I'm going to start with preparing, let's see, maybe that like corally orange color that I want that sun to be shining through. So with that brush, I'm going to start with a good scoop of yellow. I'm going to plop that somewhere on my palette. I'm going to add a little bit of red. That'll start creating that orange. And then I'm going to add white as well, kind of brighten it up. I'm going to wipe off that brush on the edge of my palette here, making sure that I'm not wasting any of that paint. And I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush. For my next color, I am going to mix kind of a nice light to medium sky blue color. With that being a light color, I'm going to go ahead and start with a big scoop of white this time. And I am going to have a lot more of this color, so I'm going to mix a lot more of this color as well. So starting with a big scoop of white, maybe about the size of 2/4. It's always better to have too much than not enough. Yeah, may as well go some more. We're going to take a good little scoop of that blue on the corner and mix that in. And then we're just slowly going to add blue until we get a color that we like. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush. And now we're going to prepare that last color of our background, which is going to be kind of a navy. We want it to be really dark up at the top of the canvas. So with that, I'm going to start with a big scoop of blue and add a little bit of black. So I'm feeling pretty good about that color right there. Okay, so with my big brush, we can go ahead and start painting on the canvas. I'm going to start from the top and just work my way down. That way my colors will be ready for the next color to blend. So I'm going to start right up at the top, going all the way across, because naturally paints can be see-through. This helps make it a more solid fill, and we're going to remember to fill in those sides as we go. Always makes it look more complete. We're going to carry this down till we are about 1/4 the way, but I kind of wanted to frame more focus onto the right side, so I'm going to be a little more heavy with this color on the left side versus the right. I'm going to go ahead into my next color, just the primary blue, because we want to just make a gradual transition between that navy and the light blue. We want to avoid many grays happening in our sky here. So with that blue, I'm going to start right underneath that navy, going all the way across, and then I'm going to start overlapping. So my brush should be halfway on that navy, halfway on that primary blue, and going back and forth until we get a nice soft blend. then I'm going to clean off my brush here and begin my lighter blue color here. This we're going to do a little bit more of. So again, doing the blending, we're going to start right underneath that primary blue, all the way across, and remembering the sides. And then we're going to start overlapping. So that brush is halfway on that primary blue, halfway on that light blue. Go back and forth until you get a nice soft blend. We're going to clean our brush again, and now we are going to start with white because we want to, again, kind of break it up before we get into that orange, because if we mix those two primary colors together, we'd get a lot of browns. So we want to use some white here, going right underneath that blue all the way across, and then I'm going to start blending, and now I'm going to start kind of shortcutting over here a little bit. It's not necessary because I am going to be putting that big bluff on that left side there. So we're just going to take that white, get it nice and blended until we're about like an inch below. And we're ready to start. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to dip right into that orange or corally color. And again, starting right underneath. And I for sure want to take this about maybe 2/3 over to the left here. And then I'm going to carry this up until we get a nice soft blend. And now what we're going to do for the water is we're going to mirror that sky down into the water. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush, and my next color is going to be white, and then so forward. So with that white, I'm going to start right underneath, again, all the way across. Blend, blend, blend. It seems like I don't have too much orange in my brush, so I'm just going to dip right into that, oops, wrong color, light blue again. Light blue, and then I'm going to start that underneath the white all the way across. Blend, blend, blend. I'm going to dip into that primary blue. I don't need to mix, or don't need to clean my brush. I'm just going to swipe that in quick. And then I'm going to finish with that navy, so all the way across. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my brush and finish one more step with this background. All right, so for the next step, we are going to add in a starry night and maybe a couple shooting stars as well. To do this, it's going to be a lot of fun and a little bit of a mess. So we're going to take a little bit of white to the side. I'm just using my big brush. Really, any brush will work. And we're going to water it down a lot. We're going to do some splattering with this starry sky because then it kind of looks a little more natural. You can always make little dots, but you know, this is more fun. So water down white quite a bit. We want it very, very like milky. And what I'm going to do here is a couple different ways we can do it actually. So you can take your brush, always hold it really close to your canvas. You can tap the back of the brush and that'll splat, or you can take your fingers and pull back the brush. Each one will kind of create a different look. Just going to focus on the upper part of my canvas here. Maybe I'll do, I always like using my fingers to pull back the brush. It seems to do a little bit more, but that's what works well for me anyways. And you can add as much or as little as you want, just make sure you're keeping it close. And to add a shooting star, this is kind of a fun trick. I'm going to use the back of the brush, dip it into the regular white, and then I'll be able to, ooh, that's a lot of paint. Just make a dot and then pull behind it. Maybe that's more of a meteor shower, but that's pretty cool too. You can use a smaller end of the brush for a smaller star. I'm just gonna do one. So I'm gonna wipe off that back of the brush and make sure my brush is clean. We're gonna make sure to let that dry here, so we'll catch you after the break. Welcome back to Picture This. We have just finished our background for a Dubuque masterpiece. For the next step here, we're going to be creating the bluff on this left side, kind of silhouetted to match in all those blue hues. We're going to be using that large Bad Hair Day brush here, and we're going to be kind of working with that navy color, but we're going to just make a little bit more of it. So I'm going to just add a little bit more blue, a little bit more black, and I might even make it just a smidge darker than before. Okay, so for this, we're going to first start with our horizon line, or that shoreline. That is going to be right in the middle of kind of that orangey color here, or maybe just a smidge lower. And I'm going to start with this somewhat straight line, starting from about a third the way from the right. So it doesn't need to be perfectly straight because it's the shore. It's always a little wavy, a little organic. Take that around the side. And we are going to create that edge, and it's full of trees. So we want it to be just, you know, not perfect. Perfectly not perfect. I'm gonna start over here, just using the corner of my brush to start doing some dabbling and just kind of relaxing my wrist to just bounce off the canvas here. I'm gonna create some bumps up for some individual trees here. And I'm going to bring this up so we're about somewhere in the middle of this blue area. And I'm going to make this little flat spot right here. For later, that will be our Dubuque monument. And I'm going to start filling in the rest of that area. We want to create that other side of the river. I'm just kind of visualizing this kind of have like a bend in the river over here, so I'm going to make some really small trees over there, exactly kind of like what we did, but because it's further away, it is going to be a little bit lighter, so I'm just going to add in a little bit of white or even that light blue until I get a nice medium color between those shades. And now I'm going to use that corner of the brush. I'm going to kind of just continue this imaginary line right here and kind of just dabble in some tree clusters on that right side. Perfect. And wrapping that around the side. And this is always fun to take a step back already and check it out. It's starting to look a little bit more realistic. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush here. And I'm going to create a little bit more depth here with the trees. So I'm going to be adding in black and actually almost like a closer little cluster of trees up here or down on the bottom of the bluff area. So with the black Bad Hair Day, I'm going to start with just kind of another little hill going across here. So starting from that right side, I'm just going to use my corner of my brush, kind of start dabbling away. Just kind of bouncing up and down here. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush here before we start that shore. I'm going to be using my middle-sized brush here, and with the black I am going to create this little chunk of land right in the front here. And actually that's where the train tracks sit up on top too. So you could get really crazy and even draw in a train. With the black, I'm going to use the thin side of my brush. I'm going to start all the way on that right side of the canvas, thin, and drawing that all the way across, somewhat straight. It can be a little wonky, that's okay. Continuing that around the edges as well. And then we're going to create a little bit more depth. The land over here is a lot closer, so it's going to be much bigger, and then it's going to taper away and disappear right around the edge of this navy trees here. So I'm going to start in the distance. It just works easier for me to go left. And I'm going to slightly come down as I go. And I do want this to be a little wavy. It is the river. So bringing that down, making sure that on this side it is maybe an inch or more taller. We're going to continue this around the side. And then we're just going to fill in that little triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush, and I'm going to do one more thing to my water here, and that's just adding a little bit more reflection to it. Right now it just kind of looks exactly like the sky, really blended. So with that middle-sized brush and the white, I can just add a little bit of white highlights using the thin side of my brush to create more of a reflection. I'm just kind of wherever. Maybe as it comes closer, though, they'll be longer. As they're further away, they'll be closer together. Alrighty. We're going to just let that dry here, and we're going to be continuing with some fun details here, so we'll catch you after the break. Welcome back to Picture This. We are in the works here of just about finishing our Dubuque masterpiece. Up here in the front, I want to create this nice sailboat. This is going to bring something even more forward, I think even creating more depth with our masterpiece here. So I'm going to be using that middle-sized brush, and we're just going to be using black. Really not much color left here in this painting. With the black, I do like to water it down though, and I did run out, so I'm going to add a little bit more black to the side, watering it down. And I am going to start with the sail of my boat. This is going to find where the kind of the center of the boat is, and then we'll work from there. So with the thin side of my brush, so holding it vertically, I'm going to draw that thin line up. If you want to use a small brush here as well, that also works. I just like this brush because it holds a lot more paint for me. I'm going to come in about a quarter of the way, between a quarter and a third of the way over from the right, and I want to start maybe just a few inches up from the bottom, but because I think I want to work down today, I think I'm going to start up here, somewhere up in that orange sky, gently pulling down, stopping about a couple inches up from the bottom. Now I'm going to create that boat, so it's just going to be like a little smile here for the top of the boat, coming maybe about 2 inches to the right and swooping down about 2 inches to the left. I'm going to create that side of the boat next, and it is just going to be like a little angle for the front of the boat, and then I'm going to make a kind of a parallel line to that curve, coming back, and then I'm going to draw a straight line up for the back of the boat. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. I want it to look like we're kind of looking down and into it a little bit. So I'm going to start with the back of my boat. It's going to be just a slight angle up and back, just about the width of my brush here, and same angle for the side of the boat here. So drawing that straight line down. We kind of basically created a square there. And now we're going to connect the front to the back of the boat on the other side. So from the tip of the brush, or tip of the boat and the tip of the brush, we're just going to pull back until we meet that far upper left corner there. And then we have a boat. We're gonna take this a little bit at a time here, just coloring it in the front of the boat here. Just completely solid. And I actually see I want to bring my boat maybe out a little bit more forward here. There we go. And the next step here is going to be filling in the back of the boat. But what I like to do is leave just a smidge of that little water showing through right here, just so that it's like we can see that corner a little bit more versus all being solid. Coloring that in. And then for the opposite side of the boat, I'm just going to do quick little pulls down using the width of my brush. So it's not solid. So otherwise we would just have like a big black blob here instead of a little bit more defined for our boat. And there we are. Take a step back, look at it. You know, you can always adjust it to make it look right. But for the next step, we're going to add in our sails. So for these, they're going to be starting all the way up at the top and working our way down. For the front sail, that one is going to be the bigger one. I'm going to start just underneath the tip of that post here. And that is going to curve slightly outward up to the front of my boat. So really light pressure. Try not to overthink it. Sometimes that, you know, stresses us out and it doesn't turn out as well as we want it to. The less you think about it, the more natural it is. So for here, I'm going to add another curve in for the opening between the sail and the post. And this is going to come down pretty close to that boat. And then for here, I'm going to just finish that triangle with an arch up, connecting across the bottom. So we can just start with coloring that one in. We're going to add that back sail. So basically exactly that same thing, just mirrored. For our next step, we're going to add in the monument. That's going to be right up here on our bluff where we left it a little flat, left a little space for it. It can always be in front of the trees as well. But I'm going to use the width of this brush for the building, making it nice and simple. Maybe about an inch tall. I'm just going to do a quick pull down, stopping right at the top of the hill there. And up at the top, it's kind of like a castle. So we're going to make those 3 little points. You can use this brush or you can use a small brush, but I'm just going to hold it vertically and do 1 little swipe, 2, and 3 on that right side. And then I might just shadow the hill there a little bit too. Just add a little bit of that black. We're going to go ahead and clean off our brush. You might want to let that dry just for a little bit, but then to make in our little windows, I'm just going to mix, or honestly, I might just use our sunset color. You could use a yellow, you could do a light blue, but I'm going to do that orangey color. Got a little bit of it here. With this, I'm just going to use that tiny brush and just do like 3 little dots for the little windows around the top and then a doorway on the front side here. So for the door, I'm going to start just near the bottom and just do a slight pull down. And then underneath each little crown at the top, I'm just going to do 3 little marks. Just like that. Alrighty. And I think we have made a Dubuque masterpiece. Before you're done though, an artist always signs their work. I'm just going to use some watered down black and sign that down in the lower right corner, as I always do. And I always like to put the year that I painted as well. And the year. Alrighty. Well, thank you for following along with me, Mercedes Faub, at the Captured on Canvas studio. We'll catch you next time on Picture This.
Give it a minute.